Welcome to this week's installment of Inclusion Revolution. We're so glad you could join us here on Eastlink Television. My special guest this week is Danny Morton. In addition to being the general manager of the White Point Beach Resort, Danny is also the chairman of the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia, also known here as TIANS. So welcome, Danny, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Tara.
The reason I was really excited about having you on is, first of all, the issue of inclusive travel is really important to persons with all types of disabilities, and certainly you and I both know beyond persons with disabilities. But in a province like Nova Scotia, for instance, where 1 in 4 persons self-identifies living with disability, nearly 1 in 4 actually, it's really an important issue, not just to us, but to really all proprietors of any kind of hospitality institute, and certainly in your role as the chairman of TIANS, you have an overview of that. And one of the things I was most excited about having you on today is I really believe you and I have talked before, and we are of like minds in terms of the importance of inclusion, and not just for persons with disabilities, but how that helps everybody. And I wanted to know if you could share, first of all, a little bit of your own philosophy around that.
Yeah, at White Point Beach Resort, I do approach the issue. We approach it a little bit differently. You approach it from the perspective of people with disabilities and challenges. I approach it from the perspective of trying to be inclusive for all the different types of guests that I would get at a place like White Point Beach Resort. The guests range from little babies right through to seniors, and then all iterations in between. So we have a lot of challenges on the property when it comes to facility. There's a lot of space that's covered at White Point. A lot of different services that we offer, different foods, all of those things. We try to be as inclusive as possible. Again, not just thinking from the perspective of a disability, but being inclusive right across the gamut. So, yeah.
Right, and I appreciate that, and I know that philosophy has been something that has both supported some activities with TIANS as well as your own within, of course, the White Point Beach Resort itself. Yeah. One of the things, and it happens to be a place I really enjoy going, so one of the things that I really like is your approach, as you've mentioned it, I'll say the term, universal access, meaning for everybody.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you even get, and this a lot of people don't, the concept of the win-win, meaning it's not just the person with disability wins when you have this environment that is certainly inclusive, but also everybody. A great example, of course, being a ramp being put in doesn't just help the person with the wheelchair, but the senior who uses a walker, someone who uses a cane, someone whose bags are full, because I always overpack when I come to White Point, I know. And also, finally, of course, a mom with kids in a stroller. So I see, and you see, how universal access is a win-win for everyone, but I'm not sure that everyone in the hospitality industry gets that. And I know in today's economy, it's so important to include everybody under the circumstances. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your plan to include everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an opportunity. I mean, as you say, and you're pointing out, the whole industry needs to recognize that, recent studies say that there's something like 1.2 million people that are travelers in Canada that are really interested in properties that are able to handle people with special needs. To not address that and to not look at that as an opportunity from a business perspective, it's just foolish. It really is a great opportunity. And when you do look at it, and I am starting to learn through you and the work that you've done at workshops through the Human Resource Council, through TIANS, when I'm starting to learn through you to look at it from the perspective of disabilities as well, it's helping include a whole lot more people on top of the 1.2 million that I'm talking about. I can tell you for sure that at White Point it's complicated. When we talk about looking at things from a guest perspective, we're not talking necessarily about from the perspective of a person with disabilities, but we may be talking about, as you suggested, something that would make it easier for a mother to manage the carriage over a ramp or over a step. So you'd put a ramp in place. That's also going to help a person with disabilities. And what I'm trying to do over the next few months at White Point, actually, is to try to define some of those places where we can do something, or we are already doing something for one person or one person with special needs that's going to help another person with special needs, because there's so much overlap. When I look at a menu that has very fancy script and it's hard to read, when I have one printed that has a very plain typeface for somebody who may not be able to see in the darker light, it's also going to help somebody who may not be able to see clearly.
Absolutely, and that's a great, again, another example of the simple things. And one of the things, again, I really liked about our discussions, Danny, before even the show, was the fact that you get that it's the little things sometimes that make tremendous difference, or what we like to call tipping points. And there really are a lot of those, especially in the hospitality industry. And because I have a history in that industry, I also feel a real closeness to the importance of inclusion. And I know you mentioned earlier some of the training that you had taken, and I know you were referring to the disability awareness training that we had provided through TIANS. And I was really pleased to see so many properties from across Nova Scotia attending and saying, I want to know more. And I remember we talked about menus.
Well, it was a great opportunity, and what it did was it gave me some context and really a framework to think about all of the things that we're already doing. One of the things that we do at White Point is we're actually an ISO certified company, so one of the very important things is to get feedback from guests in many, many, many different ways. And I don't know if some of our guests notice, but we're writing things down constantly when guests are saying something. And what we do is we study and we record all of those comments. And when we see things like, we have a ramp going up to our conference center, and somebody mentioned a couple months ago on a comment that it was hard for them still to get up and down that ramp because it was simply painted. It was a hard surface. There was no tread on it. So because one person said it, that comment actually got captured, and we're able to now just very deliberately take one of those little things and make it a better experience, or make it an experience that doesn't get in the way.
So, and is it costing you a lot of money, Danny? Is it a big issue?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it makes it just, again, and it's not that you would necessarily even notice that the tread was there, but when you notice that the tread isn't there, then that's not the proper guest experience that I want to create. And I think that's what being inclusive is all about, is making sure that we're getting rid of some of those barriers and making it the best guest experience that it can be.
For all the guests. And isn't that really all we're talking about?
And that's the point. And that's the lovely concept of universality.
Absolutely. And the things that I really love hearing are those little things, because I think the perception among people in the hospitality industry is, well, how much will I have to do? And at the same time, we look at the economy that we're in, and we want everyone to stay longer. And studies have shown that Canadians with disabilities would actually stay longer in properties if they felt the property was more inclusive or more accessible to their needs.
Not only that, they will come back.
And they will come back.
And that is the best testament that anybody can have when it comes to a hospitality property. For us, obviously, and in this economy, we want everyone walking out of the door saying, we're looking forward to our next return.
So one of the things I'm hearing that are great tips, because I'm already picking up tips from you that I want to share with our audience, and one of those is the simpleness of capturing comments as they're made, rather than just going, I'll let somebody know at the desk. They're actually writing them down.
Ongoing
a simple step that makes a huge difference to hearing your audience and really responding to the needs of your clientele. A simple move again, but to me something that's really important, and that's what I love about what you do, is you look at those simple things, but they make huge differences.
Well, it's all about process, you know, and it's making sure that there's good communication happening between departments in the hotel, between the frontline staff and myself as general manager and the whole management team. If we're not there and if we're not supporting, it's not going to happen. It's not going to change.
Right.
I mean, one person can make a difference on their own, but unless it's put in a framework that's sustainable, that's supported, that's trained, it's just not going to go on.
Right, and that makes so much sense, and it's a perfect time to take a quick break and let our friendly advertisers join into this on some level. So we'll be right back on Eastlink with Inclusion Revolution. I'm Tova, and Danny Morton is going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit more about universal access in the hospitality industry. We'll be right back.